Hi, I'm Mark Hewitson. I'm the admissions tutor in European and International Social and Political Studies. What I'm going to do today is talk to you a little bit about the programs that we run and try to answer one or two questions about those programs. You will already have, I think, come across lots of information about UCL. I'm not going to really talk about UCL too much in this context. I think you'll hear about UCL during the rest of the open day. What I can talk about with more authority is European and International Social and Political Studies. Within UCL, EISPS runs programs which are amongst the most competitive in the university. We have three separate programs: the BA in European Social and Political Studies, International Social and Political Studies, which is a separate BA structured in the same way as ESPS, but looking at regions outside Europe and studying languages in accordance with those regions. And then finally, we run a dual degree in conjunction with Sciences Po Paris, which has actually campuses throughout France, to which a fairly large number of students apply every year. These are our programs here on the slide in front of you. As I said, we are fairly competitive. It tends to mean, because we have a fairly large number of applications, about 650, 700 applications for our 90 places annually. It tends to mean that students are extremely well qualified when they come to us. Most of the applicants that we have are actually qualified to do the different degree programs that we run, and they would be extremely successful on them. So we have to select between them. In order to allow us to do that, we obviously look in great detail at your applications, your personal statement, your references, your predicted grades. And in addition to this, we run a thinking skills assessment, which is administered and set by Cambridge University. From next year onwards, this will be going online, and we'll ask all our applicants to take this thinking skills assessment. It helps us to effectively choose and select applicants amongst a very, very well qualified cohort. Okay, we see ourselves as a program as a version of social and political studies in Cambridge or PPE in Oxford with a foreign language. So our students start off with us often with a broad interest in social science subjects or philosophy, and during the course of their first year they decide what to specialize in, which discipline they want to specialize in. We are not, in other words, a liberal arts program where students could pick and mix different courses which interest them. What we want to do is expose students to a wide range of social sciences, which we do by various means, but particularly through our first year core course. And then we want them to specialize in a discipline, or at most two disciplines, which cohere. These are, as I said, from a fairly wide range of specializations. It goes beyond politics, philosophy, and economics on the PPE model, so that we offer obviously philosophy, politics, and economics, international relations, but we also offer history, law, anthropology, geography, and urban planning. So our students take one of these disciplines, and they will combine it with a language, which we view as a means of gaining access to a much wider literature, specialized disciplinary literature, and allow them to study in that country and study the region in which that language is spoken. So language for us plays a fairly specific role. This isn't like a honours degree, which has, for example, French in one half and German in another, or even history in one half and Italian in another. The language we see as an instrument, effectively as a means of gaining access to a wider range of sources and a wider range of literature within disciplinary specialization. So, for example, within history, within political science, within law, and so forth. We have as a program, a very wide range of students. Students apply to us from all over the world, and no single national group, including students from the UK, predominates. So we have a large number of students from parts of continental Europe, and a fairly large cohort from other areas of the world. And this is very much the way in which we conceive our subjects and conceive of ourselves. In fact, it's of great benefit to us as teachers. I'm personally an historian, a Europeanist. I specialize in German history of the 19th and 20th centuries, but I teach much more widely than that. For example, I teach a course on the history of European integration, and it's of great benefit that we have students from different areas of Europe and from areas completely beyond Europe who see the different processes of integration in quite different and contrasting ways, and they have very interesting conversations about the same set of historical events. I'm going to talk now a little bit about the vocational aspects of the degree. Principally as academics, we see the programme obviously as an education, which asks some of the big questions that humanity faces. So ask questions about the world in which we live, it asks questions about the different historical transformation of that world, the relations between different parts of it, as within philosophy, fairly fundamental questions about how we know, why we're here, how agents and structures of action interlock, and so forth. Beyond that, of course, our students leave university and go on to other things, and I want to talk a little bit about this. In the English-speaking world, and I think in many other different contexts, what matters most are the grades with which you leave university and the institution at which you study. Because our students are so well qualified on entry, they leave and we hope we give them additional value as well, but they leave with very, very good grades. A large proportion of our students get first-class degrees. This depends on program and by year, but typically a quarter, up to, in some years, in some programs, up to beyond a half of our students leave with a first-class degree. Nearly all of our other graduates leave with a 2-1, and in many cases a high 2-1. Beyond that, I think our program as far as employers are concerned, gives graduates an understanding of the contemporary world, an ability to function within it, and a set of skills which are transferable, which allow them to both innovate and research on their own initiative, to criticize and find and write up information and arguments which are useful in most professions to which our students migrate on leaving UCL. Typically in a given year, about a half of our students go on to further graduate studies, so take an MA in a cognate discipline. And that's why it's important for us that they specialize when they're with us, so that on exit they can apply for example, master's programs in economics, in political science, in history, and are considered as genuine specialists in these fields. Finally, I think those who leave our program obviously have the added advantage of speaking a language usually to degree level, so the same level as students who've only studied that language, so German, Italian, Spanish, and so on. And obviously, for those of our students who apply to multinational companies and have international careers, this is essential. Okay, the final advantage that we have, and I'm going to slip back to slides here, is that we are obviously located in London. And London is the start and usually constitutes the end of the so-called milk round, where employers start to recruit and eventually interview and employ graduates. And this is of great advantage to, and historically has been of a great advantage to our students. It also means, given the number of multinational companies which are headquartered around London and in it, and there are hundreds of these companies, it also means that our students can easily apply for and go on internship in these international, multinational, global companies. London, of course, has different sides. It certainly can be expensive. If you decide to eat it appropriately, well, outside the current crisis anyway, you eat in Michelin-starred restaurants, and you attend opera on a daily basis or a weekly basis and insist on hiring a box, then you will quickly, I think, run out of money as a student. But I think two things are worth bearing in mind. Firstly, you can have a cultural life in London more or less free. Large numbers of cultural institutions sponsored by other countries, the Goethe Institute, the German Historical Institute, the Institut Français, and so on, together with all the equivalent British institutions, from the Royal Festival Hall and the National Theatre through to the British Film Institute and so on. All of them run free and interesting cultural events, lectures, film screenings, musical performances, and so on. So if you're relatively curious, it's quite easy to fill your weekends with free and extremely diverse cultural events. The second thing I think to say about London is obviously that one of the great costs in London potentially is accommodation, but you will be entitled to accommodation in UCL during your first year. And then after you've gone abroad, because you're returning from abroad in your final year, you'll be given priority in UCL accommodation should you wish it, should you require it. This leaves you then on the open market for student accommodation during the second year of study. There are lots of offices in the University of London and at UCL, and indeed in the private sector, which direct our students to appropriate accommodations. This passes on from one generation of students to the next, fairly typically. Okay, what I want to do now is look in more detail at the structure of the different programs that we run. Within ISPS and ESPS, we have a fairly typical structure, which you can see on the slide here. During the first year, from our point of view anyway, the two key elements are the core course that we run. So this is for 60 credits, or a quarter of your assessed weighted courses during the first year. And in this core course, we, as I said, we introduce you to the major disciplines that we're interested in and which we teach as a department. So history, law, philosophy, political science, international relations, with guest lectures in other subjects, economics, geography, and so on. The point of the core course is that all our students have at least some basic knowledge of the different disciplines in which they can go on to specialise. In addition to this, during the first year, you'll spend a lot of time in language classes of different kinds, so discussion and essay, practicing spoken language, and then different forms of translation, grammar, and so on. During your second year, then typically you'll spend longer doing optional courses, so you'll have more chance of taking optional courses where you begin your disciplinary or continue your disciplinary specialization. You then spend year 3 abroad in ISPS and ESPS, so you'll go on a academic placement with one of our partner universities. As I said before, ESPS concentrates on regions within Europe, and therefore, if you study, for example, Spanish, you'll go and study in Spain. ISPS studies regions outside Europe, so you'll take Mandarin and go to China or Taiwan. You'll take Japanese and go to Japan. And if you take Spanish, for example, you will go and study in Mexico or different countries and universities in South Africa. Okay, so in your year abroad, obviously you attend university courses at our partner institution, and you also begin research on your student dissertation. This is a major piece of research. You choose the subject, you select a supervisor at UCL, and then you send work to them during your year abroad. When you come back to UCL in your 4th year, you'll then write up that dissertation. It's an 8,000 word dissertation, and basically on the model of a journal article in your chosen field. So it's a serious piece of research, and in our view and in employers and other universities' view, it gauges your potential for further research. So during final year, you will, as I said, write up that dissertation, but alongside it, you will complete your specialization. So all your other except your continuing language courses. So you'll take 30 credits in language acquisition in your final year, but the rest of your course allocations will be made up of specialized optional courses, special subject courses, which you select in your discipline. Okay, I just want to have a quick look at final slides here. As you can see, we have different sets of languages in ESPS, a very wide range of languages. I mean, most of our students take French and Spanish and German and Italian, but you can also take Dutch, the full range of Scandinavian languages, including Icelandic, Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish, and a wide range of Central and Eastern European languages, which you can see there, which includes Czech, Slovak, Hungarian, Polish, Romanian, and so on. In ISPS, this range of languages corresponds to the regions which we study. We concentrate on East Asia, for which you study Mandarin or Japanese, the Middle East, for which you can study Arabic and Hebrew, and the Americas, for which you can study French and go to a French-speaking university in Quebec, Canada, and Spanish, which, as I said, you can study in Mexico and different countries in South America. The degree structure of ESPS is outlined here. You can find further details on the website from which these slides are taken. It gives you a fairly good indication of the construction of the program. Beyond ESPS and ISPS, as I've said, we offer dual degree in conjunction with Sciences Po Paris. This works on the same principle as ESPS and ISPS, but you spend the first 2 years in France on one of the campuses of Sciences Po Paris. And as I said, these are spread around France. As you can see, if you take Spanish, for example, you would study this in Poitiers or Dijon. If you take German, you can study this in Nancy, Dijon, or Paris. Italian, you'd study in Paris or Dijon. So you spend the first 2 years in France beginning that study of the language, but also taking the core courses, especially during the first year, which are offered by Sciences Po, and then start to specialize a little bit more in your second year. In years 3 and 4, then you come across to UCL and you complete specialization. So at UCL, above all, you're taking specialized optional courses in your chosen discipline. Typically, we recruit between 20 and 25 students for the dual degree per year. All our programs, as I said, are conceived as international programs that allow our students to go and work around the world, and we take students from around the world. This is how we, I think, differ from standard PPE and SPS courses. We follow similar disciplinary trajectories, but we offer, I think, greater opportunities, in my view anyway, to use those disciplinary specializations in different global contexts. Okay, that's all I've got to say about the program. I am, of course, willing to answer further questions in the questions and answer session, which is coming up during the open day. Thank you for your attention.